The pupil reflex and one cranial reflex. Now, the pupil reflex is also important, and that's talking about how light is let into the eyes. If there's a bright light, for instance, if I was to, I don't know, shine a flashlight into my eyes, you would see these pupils actually get smaller, constrict, because there's so much light, I don't need as much pupil in order to see what I need to see. However, if I was to turn all these lights off, give it a little bit of time, my eyes would dilate and my pupils would become bigger for the simple reason that it allows more light in, so I would become more effective in seeing things, because the more light there is, the more likely I am to actually see said thing. A cranial reflex, something as simple as a sneeze is a cranial reflex because it's in the irritation of the nose, which is a sensory reflector. Itching is another cranial effect. It's messing with the neurons on yourself. It's giving off slight pain and slight heat receptors, because there's only 4 types of feelings that you can actually feel. It's just a combination of them that gives you all the different sensations that you have. Let's talk about the brain for a little bit. The brain is very complicated. There's so many different parts. So let's just start off with the medulla oblongata. And yes, Happy Gilmore, I know that, you know, it makes you smile, and alligators, and no, I don't really remember the movie that well. But the medulla oblongata controls the unconscious processes, including breathing rate, which of course is important because, you know, when you start, you know, whoa bro, you're messing with your medulla oblongata, which increases your heart rate and therefore kind of messes with your biosystems. Not a little bit, but a lot. The cerebellum, you know, is coordinate muscle movement and balance. Again, whoa bro, like when you smoke and do other bad things that affect your neurons, like your cerebellum's going to be off, your movement's going to be off, your balance is going to be off. That's why you see drunk people stumbling around. The hypothalamus controls the secretion of hormones into the pituitary glands. I mean, that's pretty simple. If you mess with that at all, like, you're just not going to have enough testosterone, and guys are going to start growing breasts, and girls are going to start growing hair on the chinny chin chin, which is bad. Very bad. Don't do that. Pituitary gland secretes the hormones that the hypothalamus orders to be secreted, so it kind of like does all the work. So, if you will, the hypothalamus is kind of the master, and the pituitary gland is the slave. So, that's not meant to be racist, because slaves can be white too, or Asian. Anyway, the cerebellum hemispheres. Now, the 2 sides, you know, complex thought and memory, learning, problem solving. You have like the artistic side, artistic side, and the problem solving side, the creative side, and the serious side, if you will. And those are just the different hemispheres of your actual brain. Crazy, I know. Now, you can use the pupil reflex in testing for brain death. So when people are in comas, that's why they shine lights on you to see if any part of your brain has actually died. Because if it doesn't dilate, there's something going wrong with the neurons inside your brain, which is bad, leads to death, destruction, despair, blah, 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 blah. Taxis and kinesis. Whoa. Wait, so you're telling me that there are taxis in your head like the things in New York City? Well, no, Mr. Southern guy that wears a raccoon hat. There aren't taxis. It's called taxis and kinesis. Taxis is a directional movement. So a lot like taxis in itself, where if they have a passenger, they're going, as unorderly as it looks, they are going in a direction and they're headed towards that stimulus, which in a taxi's form would be, you know, the payoff of money in the end. But in so many different other things like roly-polies, it could be, you know, a moist towelette. But once they get to said moist towelette, or once the taxi drops off its paying customer, it goes into a form of kinesis, which is kind of just like random movement without any orientation and no direction. So the taxi is looking for another paying customer, or the roly-poly is just happy to be on the moist towel, so it just kind of hangs out, but it's not still. It keeps moving and vibrating and does what it does. So I just explained an example of a behavior from the roly-polies, but it's important for innate behavior because, for instance, the first thing a baby looks at, or the first thing a baby looks for when it's born, is a nipple to feed on. So you're telling me that first thing a baby looks for is a nipple. And I know I messed up the hats because that was meant to be the raccoon, and I'm getting my voices mixed up, so I'm just going to do Russian on this one. So, Conrad, you're telling me the first thing a nipple looks for, not a nipple, a baby looks for, is a nipple. Now, do explain, Dr. May, why that is. Well, Vladimir, Estragon, the reason that is because, one simple reason, nourishment. And that's important because that's what a baby needs, and that's an innate behavior. The first thing it wants is nourishment because it knows it needs nourishment to survive. So it looks for the nipple, which provides nourishment, and breast milk. So let's move on to learned behavior. This is completely different than innate behavior because innate behavior you're born with, learned behavior you learn when you're a child. So, and there's different types of conditioning. Those who've seen Brave New World know Pavlov, and hopefully we all know the three big ones, which we'll get to later. Excuse me. Burping is another type of behavior that most women find unattractive. Anyway, classical conditioning is basically just the altering of behavior by using an external stimulus. I was watching the television the other day, actually, and they actually have trained giant African rats to smell out TB, the TB disease, and to smell out landmines. And they did this by clicking a little, or let's go snapping our fingers. They had a clicker, but every time they snapped their fingers, they would feed the rat banana, because apparently it was their favorite meal. So they go, banana, banana, banana. So the rat knows to stop whatever it's doing when it hears, and to come find the banana. That's called classical conditioning. It takes a little bit of time, but very effective. Pavlov did the same thing on dogs. He basically what he did was he would ring a bell every single time and then give the dogs a piece of meat. And then he would do it, did it, do it, did it, do it, did it. And then he'd ring the bell and didn't give meat, but the dogs started salivating anyways, expecting meat to be sent to them or given to them. So that in itself is classical conditioning. Operant conditioning is behavior which develops as a result of the association or reinforcement, basically reward and punishment. Skinner did this with a rat or a pigeon, and basically what happened is he would place a food lever, and that would feed the rat. A hungry rat would be placed in the box, and it would eventually press the lever by accident. It learned to associate that if you press the lever, you get the food. And so it would keep pressing the lever and get the food, that would be a reward. Shock therapy in humans is the same kind of conditioning. Every time you have a certain thought, you get shocked, which is punishment, so you learn not to have those thoughts anymore. It was, you know, super effective. Let me tell you something. Very effective. Anyway, Lorenz had the last experiment of the three that we really need to know, and that's where basically he took the eggs from a mother goose, and when they were born, he was the first thing that they saw, and that made them think that he was their mother, or even something as simple as a bouncing ball. It was the first moving object that they saw that they associated as their mother. And this is important because it shows that it doesn't really matter what species you are. It's whatever the first thing is that moves becomes your mother. So that's important. And then this increases the chances of survival, you know, in so many ways. Birds can avoid eating bad caterpillars, something as simple as that. Other animals learn how to catch things, you know, like sharks and anchovies. I saw that on the television the other day. Sharks will push the anchovies into shallow water, and then the anchovies can't get away. They associated shallow water, anchovies equals good lunch. And then, of course, you know, it's important to be the first thing that your children see, because then you become their mother, etc., etc., etc. Social behavior is a very interesting concept in itself because of what it is. There are thousands of animals that have social behavior, but the big ones, of course, are ants, bees, and termites. Now, ants and bees are two that we definitely went into in class, and in the bee colonies, they have three different types.